Now, if you've never seen the thing before, it's coming as, do you remember it, or is it coming as a surprise to you, Mr. Kovar, in terms of, do you remember most of this? Yeah. No. What I meant is the way it worded. It was the way it occurred, you think? Oh, yeah. I wanted to get your comments, like some of the foremen, the different people that have talked with me, or the workers. That way, if you see something, you follow me, that needs correction, or, that you want to add to, you do so. Or Ms. Cope, you didn't go down to the courthouse, you said?
I was in the courthouse.
Because, let me just get aside from this for a minute and tell you. Did you know Leonard Mankiewicz? Do you remember him? Yeah.
I know him when I
He says he
was,
like
I know who he was.
when you left the stand, he thought, let me tell you what I'm telling you, he and a number of people told me, maybe they were wrong, you see, because everybody's got a blur in so many years. When Alex left the stand, he went into a side room. Leonard went in with him. Eli Zivkovich, you may remember. I think Lockie Riggs, or do you remember who went in the room?
He wasn't in the room. Him and Davis and...
No, they didn't come. They stayed in the... But somebody came at the Bureau, Joe Dovis, somebody came from the Bureau of Mines that you might have known. I don't know. Several of them went in there with you. And it was their impression that what you had said on the stand, that you had kept a record, made some notes. Remember what you say in it. Right. Do you remember who you gave that to? Because I wanted to get that down. I know it was confusing. Who were the three people there, Mr. Kovar? If you could help me with that, because we're trying to understand, the thing, and it's...
Would you want this one over here?
Which?
There's one on this other side.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a big help. Thank you, miss. But there were three of them went into the room with you?
Yeah, I don't know.
And you gave them all your notes. How many pages? Like they said they were on tablet, like a tablet, like you might find a file. What would you say, a white page tablet?
Yeah.
With lines?
I don't remember.
Huh?
Notebook paper.
Regular notebook
I
paper.
think it was regular notebook paper.
They had the idea that maybe, I don't know where they got this, that maybe you had, when you felt better, the thing was very upsetting to all the people in it, had like dictated and your wife had written it down, what was on the notebook.
She did.
Okay. Right. So you had written down, right? Because they remembered that. You follow me? They told me that his wife, so they thought you were present. You follow me? That was in their recollection.
I was there, but I
You didn't
wasn't
come
in
out of the
little
courtroom
room.
into the little room. Okay.
No.
But that he must have told them. That's why. Would that be true? You probably
I'm
told
trying to
them.
read and listen.
I know. Go ahead.
What you're talking about.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting. How's it reading? Is it about the way it occurred, is the way you told it to them? And then the only thing is, I wondered if you gave them to him, if you would remember what was on the paper. If you saw it again, if I showed it to you again. Not the way it looked as a photo, you follow me, but the words of it. Or whether it was changed, in places. I don't think it's testimony last one, about 6 pages there, so he'll read it, and then I'll show him the part where they put in what they call an appendix. And I want you to see how that compares with how it's maintained from the document of yours. That you have. Well, if you see anything, is there any part of it, Mr. Kovar, that you see there? Is there any?
It says here that I didn't know what to do. I really couldn't do anything.
No. Well, you said you were called out a great deal, you told me earlier, weren't you? I mean, in terms of a lot of it at night?
Anywhere between 12 and 6.
Now, you know there's a bunch of those men testify that the fans went down at different times and they had to pull the men out. Would you be called out even if a fan you weren't responsible for was, like, say, you normally took care of Athos, but Mods Run and one way over went down. Would they call you out on almost any fan trouble at night?
They told me on, they had Louis Gardy took care of number 4 fan, but if they had...
Number 4 was at Llewellyn, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But would they ever call you out for that as well?
Yeah, if it went down or they had...
They might have 2 of you working on it, huh, during the night?
Well, most times it'd be, I'd go from here. Sometimes I'd get on...
See, the different witnesses, it's pretty uniform. Several of them testified that several times that false safe thing didn't work. Now, that was not your fault, you follow me at all. It just was not a working system. It was supposed to cut off each fan, like in 3 minutes one, 3 minutes another, in 12 minutes, the whole mine be down of electricity. But we know it didn't work because on November 20, A section continued to produce for about 40 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes after the explosion, which shows you the false safe wasn't working, you follow me? It was supposed to be a automatic thing. Now, nobody in maintenance was to blame for that because they claimed they were bringing the manufacturing in to look at it, to find out why it wasn't always working.
Well, the paper that I gave them, it states down everywhere I've been, everybody I've contacted.
Yeah, they're talking about on that morning. You're talking about that day, right?
That day.
Yeah.
Well, it was normal procedure for me to go down there. If I was on the job or was called out, and there was a fan down, I'd go directly to that fan. See about getting that fan on and make a call over as soon as I got it on, and it was okay. Now, I was back in these boondocks a lot of time in these woods, and I would use these people's phones, and that morning I called over here to let them know what is going on there, but I could see vision. And then I wanted to let them know that I was going to Lee Helen. In other words, if they were looking for me, they'd know what route I went.
Right.
If they needed me somewhere else.
Right.
And then when I came back with Sellers...
Well, I knew, I'd never heard of you going to Stout's place because I knew Simons had told me. You remember she worked at the, as a home health aide, remember, in that kind of work. And her husband was a foreman, I think at 4 States or one of those. Rachel, was it Rachel? Yeah. And that morning, she called me to tell me about the explosion. So I have the time fixed too because they're mistaken in saying that the company notified the sheriff's office. I notified the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office, nobody knew about the explosion. Company was too busy calling different people, you follow me, inside the company, like the dump man, you follow me, that type of thing. First thing I figured is, well, if a mine's blown up and she's calling me at 5:40, I looked at the clock, you know, she says you had just left the porch of her house and had asked her, you tried to call or something and asked her to complete the call for you.
I gave her the number on the sheet of paper and asked her
Yeah,
to make that
and that was a mine number. She remembered that very well. It was here at the slope. And I think you and I, you know, the news boys, a lot of people know that Lockie must have known of some trouble because he was called out, okay? And you reached, in other words, when she reached him at the slope, okay? Now, that isn't your baby. You see what I'm getting at? Part of the problem later, when I think you were concerned about yourself and your blame, was that your story is perfectly all right. The story that is changing, and that many people now know about, by the dozens, okay, that's coming to light, is that very high people were aware of more trouble that night than you know, have come to light. That's what the problem was.
Oh, you mean
and I think you took, if I can just say so, I didn't know you, Mr. Kovar. I would hear from friends, by spending the whole 10 days here and all, you know, how awful you felt about the thing. You follow me? You were working on things at first in those days. And I think it probably burdened you, hurt your health in a lot of ways. You know, the whole pressure and effect of that, you know, experience you went through. Because we went through it with these guys at Hominy Fall, you know, feeling that in some way you were to blame. Actually, there seems to be a considerable amount of evidence that has come to light, federal inspectors, others, are convinced that much higher up in the company was aware of problems during that night, so that the call to the slope actually reached, officials of the company who wouldn't have been there if there hadn't have been problems, okay?
Well, the problem they had with that
Mhm.
was DC power. Part of the slope on the bottom, the chain haul, is run by DC.
Mhm.
And then they have AC.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Well, he couldn't dump coal unless he had his chain haul run.
Right.
So that would shut him down. So far as I was concerned, I knew of no other trouble that night
Right.
prior to 3:30.
No, I
And
think,
when I went
you mean
down-
when you were called out, the guy on top at Llewellyn says he called you at 3. I don't know whether they got to you somewhere. By 3:30 you probably had reported, roughly. I guess what I'm saying is that Ms. Simons, her testimony's probably accurate. She called the slope and got Mr. Riggs, okay? And it's about 5:32, 5:35 at the most in the morning, okay? I guess he lives in Fairmont, okay? It's very obvious that that there's much more at stake here, as all the mine inspectors believe, you follow me? That not your fault, follow me, from anything you did, but that no mine blew up at 5:30 without earlier trouble accumulating gas at some point. Now, where it was, is another problem.
I couldn't see anything on number 1 or number 2 fan where
No.
they had any trouble.
I agree with you, because they're on this
The
end.
other
They're on the
two-
eastern end.
The other
But
2
I-
fans,
You yourself know when you hit Mod's Run, something had blown the doors open. And you were there at 5:30, okay?
no, it was later 5:30, because I was here at 5:30.
How long would it take you to drive?
Go across the hill, I had a 4-wheel drive, it'd take me 15, 20 minutes. You have to go across both hollows. When I went down number 1, and I went to check number 2,
Who did you, when you decided to go over to Mod's Run, right? Who did you talk to then? I don't remember
Cecil
what.
Sullivan,
That's right.
called him on the phone, told him the power had dropped down, there was a tremor. And I don't know, just had a feeling, I never seen that in my life, that erupted.
Mhm.
And I told him, he said, well, he'd go to Llewellyn.
Mhm.
I said, well, I'll meet you over there, I'm going over to check the fans.
Okay.
And that's normal procedure.
Well, it was also normal for you to tell him as you left Mod's Run, what you were starting for Mod's Run and then Llewellyn. Is that the order you were going in? So when you were telling Miss Simons to call back to Lockheed Riggs, you meant to tell him, I'm on my way to Llewellyn now, right? Is that correct? Because you want to keep them informed, I guess.
Well, that morning, the reason I can remember it so well,
Yeah.
my watch stopped, I was so busy
Mhm.
that I never even looked at my watch. But as we got back over to Llewellyn, and Cecil and I, we had orders to take that bucket off, which is approximately 3 to 5 feet from the hole, the intake. When it went over,
Are
I
you
was in
talking
the leak
about
pipe.
when you and Cecil are at Llewellyn, or where are you at that point?
After we had joined and came back over here, then we were given orders that there were some men
Oh, at Mann's.
to get out, and we needed to get the bucket off from the emergency voice at Law's Run. So I took a lead truck, and he was behind me.
I
But
remember.
when we pulled up, I looked, and there was black smoke coming out. Well, the truck I had, I always had fuses in it, rubber gloves in it, climbers in it, everything I needed. I
Mhm.
always seemed to it that I had it.
How long had you been an electrician?
Well, that's a cute one. Since I retired, I find out that I wasn't classified as an electrician. I was classified as a coal processor.
All that time?
No, since 60 on. They told me I was
Did
a
that
mechanic.
cost you?
Huh?
You mean a coal processor? Did it cost you money to be processed lower?
Yeah, I got the top rate. But anyhow, to get on what I was
Yeah.
telling you about. So we went over, and I was in a leak truck. We had the orders to take off the bucket so we could take it over to the other shaft, the lawn,
Mm-hmm.
the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
We got there, the smoke was rolling out heavy. So I stopped my truck. And I got out, walked back cellar. I said, you can't go there right now. I said, it's like blow up right now. And I never had seen too much of this in my life.
Sure.
Within
about what
So-
time was that? That's the past
10
8
till 8.
That's the big
Because
explosion.
That's the time I asked him, I said, what
That's the
time you
second.
got? And the reason I did that, but he said 10 till 8. And I knew that we'd have to get that bucket out of there fast. We had to unbolt the clamps. So we went over, and they had a truck there.
Yeah.
We took it loose, and a fellow wanted to back the truck up to get it. And we wouldn't let it, we rolled it out of the way, got it on the truck, and then I went ahead, and Aldi Freeman brought the bucket in his truck. It went on up to that shaft.
And pretty quick after
That's
that,
when
you
they had
pulled
a
out the
nurse there,
guy.
and they had a doctor.
Dr. Hunter was there, and Dr. Stillings was there, and the
They
nurse.
set up a shed. Now,
I don't know if
we
you
had
know
a dump
Dr.
truck
Hunter
there.
and them, but
We had a
that's who was there.
flatbed truck.
Huh?
We had a flatbed
Yeah.
truck. We took the cable off of it. We put, well, it had to be around 600 foot of cable on it.
Mhm.
So Freeman and I got on there, put our gloves on. It was cold. And Joe Mason was there. And I asked him, I said, he said, there's 8 men down there. So I asked if my nephew was there,
Who was your nephew?
George Ford.
He was, he was in the trap band.
They said, no.
Is
So
that
we
your
brought
brother
2 out.
George's son?
Yeah,
Same.
we brought 2 out. And these 2 were pretty well shucked up. They was hurt other than,
They sent up,
there.
they said the sickest ones, the ones that were
Right.
most gassed, yeah.
And they took them in there, and the doctors and nurses were. They took them out.
They just
and
laid them
brought
out on the
3.
ground right there, didn't they?
Well, they had a little tent or something.
Yeah.
Shit. Then they brought out 3 more. Then he brought out 3 more. And when they brought it out, they just run that truck so fast that we was going oil on it. Out. From there, which is
Sure.
my statement, then they had me going different places here.
I know they
came
did. The
up,
rest of your
they
day
told me
was
they had
very-
2 men when I got back. They had 2 men
Yeah.
on the bottom here. For me to go out and get them out of that shaft. And that elevator, I was checking once a week. And we used it to put parts in there.
You talking about this elevator where the last men came out of the 8th side, the eastern
2
end?
of them.
Those were the guys that didn't come out.
So around the hill was it, 8, 9 o'clock? 9
Yeah.
o'clock or so.
Well, I'm not sure it was that
So
late,
I
but
went
where they
up.
testified.
And I had my meter with me and my tools, and I went up, which my orders was to make sure the elevator
Let me
was
see
right.
if I'm getting what you're saying, Mr. Kovar. When you returned from Mayans, you came back here to 8th, and those 2 men were still underground at 8th, those last 2? What, they weren't the dump men, who were they? Were they the dump
2
men?
mechanics.
The 2 mechanics.
And when I went up to...
And this is after 8 o'clock, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Before they reach the surface? Did you see them reach the surface after 8?
Yeah. They were out. I knew they had...
I knew they were very late. They were the last.
I was going up the steps when they waved at me, because all of them knew.
Sure.
And they waved at me, and I waved at them. But
Yeah.
still, I went up and pushed the button, and the elevator went down,
Still functioning.
and it came back up. Then my orders...
I thought
carried
Lockie
out.
testified that he
out.
asked you to do that, to make
He
sure
did.
the elevator was functioning up and
Yeah.
down. Now, when you called from Simon's, you didn't reach Lockie yourself, did you?
No.
You asked, you
I
decided
didn't
you
call
better...
for Simons.
No, you asked her to make the call for you?
Yeah.
You gave her the slope number, and you said, tell Mr. Riggs what? Did you tell him, do you remember what you wanted
I
him
didn't
to?
exactly tell Riggs, I don't think, I just tell anybody who's down here, because it
Yeah.
was all congregating down here.
Yeah. In other words, they were congregated at
It was all of them from Monongah and everywhere else, all the big shots were coming in, and
Yeah.
that's where they're, so they know where I was at, and if they wanted to get a hold of me. or
Right.
something. And which, when we
Now,
got through
when
the
you
job,
heard
we
the
back.
tremor, who did you ever see or talk to at that point? After you heard the tremor in the shop?
I went straight to the phone, in the slope.
And
After I
called
called
Cecil?
Sellers, in come Buck Fluharty. So then I wanted, and I told him I was gonna check the fans, I gave the book to Buck, and told him to call Riggs. Whether he did it or not, I don't know. I was on my way to check the fans.
Mhm. What did you actually see at Margeron in your, was the doors had been blown open?
Exploded doors was opened up.
How much
Coming
smoke
out.
was coming out? A lot or a little at that
It was a
point?
good bit, but mostly gray.
It was gray at that point. Later it was pure black and furious.
Well, I wasn't there too long.
No, later on, I mean, when you came back at the 8 o'clock, at that time you got
Well, I
caught.
never went to number 3 fan in. I went to number 3, the intake,
Mhm.
for emergency force. We had a gasoline international.
Now, which band did you go to? It wasn't at Margeron? The one, when you came back to get the bucket?
Down below it,
Below it. What do you call that one?
that'd be number 3 intake,
Intake, okay.
where emergency work. What's this for? Is a,
Well, let me tell you what you may have, if you read the Fairmont papers, I've been teaching the course on coal and its people, you know, at Fairmont State. Our people were the nurses, the doctors, everybody was here with the Fairmont, the Farmingtons, the families of the
Salvation Army
70s.
did a good job.
I thought they were wonderful down at the community building, you know, with the way they cook. They don't get a lot of publicity or anything, but didn't you think they did a lot of hard work? You
They
know?
were over there with tents, and it was closing off when we were putting lights up and stuff, because they thought they might have some more men coming out there.
Can you find his name, and you'll know it is,
Yeah,
except
I
if you
did.
switch around.
No, I was pretty well wore down when that happened. And,
Well, you know what struck me, let me just explain, because our concern, we didn't know the Hominy Falls people. They were 150, 200 miles from here. But we sent down Dr. Hunter, remember Miss Bradley, a nurse. We sent a social worker, Miss Rudy then. Those people, when it was reported to us that they were very shook up a year after the disaster, very nervous, tense, a lot of pains, they were taking GI serious, you know, being tested for everything. We decided, you know, you got to really, the public doesn't understand what people go through, you know, suffer something like this.
well, in '54, I had 15 minutes to go on to work, and I blew up my brother.
Did your brother die in
Yeah,
there?
he was killed in '54. He's 2 years older now. Well, when you go down there, there's nothing you can do. But anyhow,
What do you mean it was within 15 minutes you went to work?
well, I was going second shift.
On that same Saturday, that was only a maintenance crew in 54. That was why there was so few men lost.
There was 3 of us that would work practically every Saturday.
Oh.
And we had 3 stations take care of it. So I
Yeah.
clean them up, change brushes on them, and all on the weekend.
So you were very
We wouldn't take
close
a
to
bucket
entering
with
that
us.
mine yourself.
At that time, we would take a bucket.
What
with
time
us.
on Saturday did that blow up in 54? Quarter to 2 or something like that?
15 till 2. But anyhow, I went in on that recovery, hooking up mine pumps.
Were you know?
Yeah, I went through that. And this one here, after the explosion, I didn't think I was much older. And I didn't think
You don't look old. What I think you know, from what I've
A lot of
heard.
mileage.
Huh?
A lot of mileage.
Yeah, no, there's no question that Miss Bradley or anybody that knows you has described how personally shaking this experience was to you, because it was a very fierce experience, and you had the terrible role of being called out as much as you were on, you know.
Well, I knew most of them men, and you know, it shakes you up. Years back, I worked inside all the time. If you got a man hurt on the section, it was me, maybe a lot of people. When they take a meeting out, it's on your mind. So that's right. You get a man killed, regardless of how he gets killed, it bugs you.
That's right.
And I was in the service for overseas for 30 months, 16 days. We had a few that was killed up there.
I didn't know what you meant earlier when you said that. I thought of you as a mine electrician or, you know, maintenance man, senior maintenance. I didn't know your correct title. I didn't know what you meant by just saying they called you a coal process. Did you mean
That's what the company, for the
Hey,
enhanced
they called your classification just?
coal process, and then they had me short 3 years, which I got that.
Did you straighten that out?
Either one
Yes.
class electrician.
Hmm?
I think, but maintenance?
Some-
Maintenance.
You
Before
was
that-
really, what you really was is a troubleshooter, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was electric.
Now, didn't you say earlier that you were called out probably more than anybody in this mine at night, in the middle of the night, or not? Is that not fair? Can you ever remember what the other men testified to in there, fans being down at different times? You were not called out day or night on any of those? Where they had to evacuate the men. Men testified to several evacuations.
Oh,
Nor is that
that's
such
right.
a gassy mine, they had to pull them back fast if a fan went
Oh, I've been on the job when the fan was down.
down.
In fact, number 3 fan
That's
They
at
pulled
Mods
them-
Run,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
they pulled them all out, but about a year before the
That was about a
explosion.
year before the explosion. Yeah, I didn't mean not the
And
explosion.
then they had industrials come in and change shafts on it,
Yeah.
bearings,
What-
motor, and everything. That shaft, I'd say that fan's in better shape than any of them.
Right.
Not that the other one
Well, I
wasn't.
think if it was injured by something else, a fire, you know, it was not the fan itself, do you think there? But
No, then
the,
what gets me
yeah,
is, does everybody think the mine blew in or blew out?
I
It's
don't
as
know.
simple as that.
Yeah. If it blew in, what would have caused it to blow in? Huh?
I don't know, that's news to me.
Huh?
I couldn't see where any mine blows in.
No. No, and why would, what, you see Sam
You see
Stout?
the books, if you look,
Yeah,
and you see the charts, and you see
Yeah.
the books. Now, there's not a time that I was in a substation or a thing
yeah,
that I didn't mark what the water gauge was.
yeah.
And also, if I had to, which from time to time, it has happened where you get a bearing was hit. We had a little like watch, I would put on them. And I would tell them, and I'd also put it in the book. So they had the books from the fans. I know number one, number
Did
two.
anyone ever show you at the hearings, the, what do you call them, the fan logs? What's the right word for the logs?
That would be the book.
The books,
Yeah.
from Llewellyn and from Mods Run, is that right? And from Eighth, well, how many books?
I don't know whether they ever showed them or not. I
Well, they
never seen
had
them.
them there. Yeah, I was told by
I
several
didn't see
people they had them there, but I'm not sure they showed them to each witness as he came on, you know? Now, there were several strange things that nobody understood. The fall-safe system should have cut off some of the, things. Some of them didn't. Some of these show, they can't understand. I think they show a log going right on at some of the, of course a ventilating fan should go on. It shouldn't be, cut off by a fall-safe system. But the Section A foreman, that A section foreman, his whole crew, none of them hearing each other testify, all testify same. No switches, they kept working, didn't know anything. No, they didn't even know there'd been an explosion. 45 minutes, an
Well,
hour
I
and
was
a quarter
concerned,
later.
I didn't know where the men was working in the mine. And my first concern was that if a fan went down, go to that fan, get that fan on quick cost you. If you couldn't get it on, you run into trouble, which I have had black
What?
specks in.
Well, now you don't normally handle Mods Run, right? Normally.
Not-
You,
no.
you only handle 8
One day,
and
one-
you handle the slope.
One day a week I was ordered to check that.
Right, but at this point, you went to Mods Run. This point.
Well, if we had power, trouble on any of these fans here, I would go over and check that.
No, what I mean is when the power dimmed, why would Mods Run appear to have dimmed the power? What would a power, you mean, could it have cut off the fan? Is that what's struck or what?
Anytime one fan goes down, the water gauge, you go in this fan, that. Now, number two, when I went in there, the water gauge had dropped. Well, that means that you could have trouble on the fan someplace.
Now, when you went to number 2, you could see that, is that right?
Yeah.
You had done that earlier when, the same morning?
That morning,
Yeah.
after the
You mean the water gauge will actually show you that this,
little drop to it,
well, that's a good indication.
like 3%. I mean,
Yeah, but that's
3%.
enough to warn you that maybe there's something somewhere else.
Somewhere else, so you go on to see that.
Mhm. How much work would there be when you'd be called out on a fan? It might be that everything was, you just needed to bring the manufacturer in to put in new parts like at Mods Run earlier, year early.
Well, it all depends. They had a crew from Monongah, Henderson, that looked at the fans, and we took down a big job, we contracted out, and cut it so much that it was,
But the big Llewellyn, whatever, they call it fall safe, I don't know what the board, I guess you'd call it, huh? The board at Llewellyn was a thing the manufacturer had a service, right? You couldn't expect to service that, could you, locally, or?
Once, very seldom, we ever worked on that.
Mhm. Because,
I wasn't over there but one day a week unless they had come. I would go over on Monday to get
Well-
parts. I worked on this side.
that's what I figured, you were the eighth,
Sellers.
the eastern end, huh?
Sellers and, Gardy was the one that
Mm-hmm.
really took care of that fan, did most of the electric work over there. If they needed home or something, and maybe they'd call me and call them both, I'd be there first. That day I wasn't over there. When I went over there after I went to Moss Run,
Mm-hmm.
but I was looking for celery because everything was flat and dark. And I asked one fellow there, I said, where's celery? He said, it's on the other side, caught me.
That was at Llewellyn when you
What
got.
I'd seen on number 3.
Sure. Well, by then you knew there was real trouble because his Llewellyn dark, you just come from smoke at Moggs. I mean, there's clear indications of serious
They
trouble.
were notified as fast as I could notify.
Oh, I think you did. I think first of all, you didn't try to call the slope. You just told Miss Simons to make the call for you.
I tried to call it, but I couldn't get through. The line
Yeah,
was busy.
right.
You can picture yourself in something like that. They're doing a lot of calling, and you got your lines all tied up.
Right.
So then I didn't want to spend any more time there than I have to, because I figured I'd get more use someplace else.
Well, she and her husband both testified, separately to what they see. Now Sam Stout's the only one with a little different. In other words, they substantially are saying they called, they spoke to Mr. Riggs, gave him the message, at the slope on the
I never see anyone that good be on the fan.
But Sam Stout was different. He said that he saw his clock, and it was 4 a.m. He's the only one that's somewhat different in his testimony. And at 4 a.m., he realized the noise that had woke him up. And yet his house is further from the fan, I think, from the, is it not? I don't know the way those houses lie. How would you describe?
100 yards above the fan.
Would you describe, like, where, if the fan is here, then what's the closest house? The Simons house? Yeah. So his is still further, right?
Oh, yeah,
He's the only one
yeah. I
that
never was
said,
up there, so I wouldn't know. I can see it from where I was at.
but it's at least 200 yards where the Simons house is how far?
30, 40 yards.
And I know they rent from the company. I don't know. I think Sam Stout may rent from the company.
I'd use their phone.
Yeah. Well, they said you did. They said they had given the right, to the company for their maintenance people in taking care of the Modron fan to use their phone. That was an understood agreement. I don't think they rent free, maybe, but they're supposed to do that,
So if the fan was down, just like you were talking about bringing them in out, if I see there's something wrong with the thing, the first thing I did is call them.
Well, your call was very prompt. As soon as you...
So that they could do what they had to do. It's up to their decision to take them in out of what to do.
No, you're not the boss. It takes a mind boss to bring it.
One night I had a black snake in there. And they called me just like we did before, and I got the flashlight and went over there. It's about 8, 9 o'clock in the evening.
Where was this?
Not? Yeah. I went on over with my car, and when I got over there, the flashlight, I closed on the closed, and the fan was down. And Scout came down that night. I never knew it from Adam. He said there was a big flash in my car. That's a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So it was in the fall.
What do you mean by black snake, just so I...
Well, there's a creek there, and they go into the heat at the evening. And electricity to the heat. So when I went in, they had a hose guard there that you push, and then you try to start to and it had to be off. And when I went in back that cabin, about that much, you got 2,200 volts in there. So I went back there and turned the flashlight on, and I took that face, and something went right by me. It was a snake, about 4 or 5 feet long. I don't know how long it was, a black snake.
Yeah.
But he had gone up. Well, when I seen that, then there was no use for me to put the fan on, because I could leave 5 or 10 minutes and kick it back off. You get back in across the oil switch. So then I called over and told them I had trouble with the black snake. They brought them in out. They didn't want to catch it. It's in the law.
That was 2 years before?
2 or 3.
That's interesting, black snake.
I went in.
You never told us. This was very interesting, isn't it, to understand the human thing?
But I pulled the switch on the outside. And I went in because if you get across there, I might get electrocuted.
So you called the company and told them, and they had to evacuate the man that night? Like 2 or 3 years earlier. That was because of, let me understand, because I don't know the technical things that you did. A black snake had gotten into a power box which contained 2,200 volts, and if he continued being able to get in there.
That I had contact that man because he came down and he was...
How old a man is he, and what does he look like? I've never...
heavy set. I'd say he looked to me like he was 6 to 10. But anyhow, I went in there to look for that snake. I put my rubber gloves on because I'm afraid of snakes. But I still get them
I
out
would
if I
be.
have to. And I looked all over. And I looked up past the
Yeah.
door. I couldn't find it. And the guy comes down and he tells me what had happened. I said, I know what happened. I
He
said,
told
"There's
you
a
a-
snake in there. He
Yeah.
said the flash, big,
Yeah.
light. I said, there's a snake in there. He got across the oil switch. I have to get him out of there before I can start that fan.
Now, you don't mean that the snake is getting 2,200 volts through him, do you?
Yep.
Wouldn't that kill a snake?
Not always, no.
2,200 volts wouldn't kill a snake?
So what?
You mean that snake that you saw alive had 20, if he was a flash, that means he had it in him?
His boy killed a snake.
Huh?
We finally found a snake.
You found it.
It took me a long time to find it.
How long was the
Fought.
fan down?
Oh, that's 45 minutes.
Now, did they evacuate the man that
They
night?
had him out. They
You
couldn't- I
called down and talked to Albert Takish, or who that night, you remember?
Called the lamp house over there.
And then they get the
And
word
Albert
in.
Takish wasn't on that ship.
Yeah, but what I mean is that they get the word then that there's a big fan down, so,
Fans can't go on until I get the snake out.
right.
So they did evacuate.
That's funny, over a snake. Well, isn't that compared to the stories you hear?
So then I took...
How did you know that by killing that snake, you'd be all right? Why wouldn't the mate come along and go up with you?
How would I know?
I'm just asking because, is there a way they could have put it, put something like screen wire over it or something that would have kept them out? No way to...
Snake would take a little hole. So we got to look, and I had the rubber gloves on, and finally I picked up a little container about that big, and blew a hole in it, and I picked it up. That snake was in there. So Stout's boy come down. He said he'd kill that snake. I said, well, I give him rubber gloves. I said, don't hit nothing but the snake. And he hit the snake and killed it. We laid it outside the fan. I said, don't throw him away. I want to see what it did to him.
Sure.
Then I put the fan on. Then I called in. The fan was put on. I give them the time.
Yeah.
Then they make their fireballs runs.
Right.
And they decide whether it was midnight.
They have to decide, yeah, what time did
But
that
then-
happen, that snake, deal?
About 8 o'clock.
At night?
So then the fellow, maintenance foreman from the Army comes over, and they had called him because anytime I was hung up on the fan, they would call the
Right.
others out. If I wasn't, they wouldn't. They called him now, and he'd come over. He was half sick. And he said, what's your trouble? I said, I don't have no trouble now. I said, there's a snake in the fan. Let me see if you did. Yeah, he didn't. He went out and looked at it, and there was a bird swallow that night. So, if you notice a snake in there, you have to be around.
How often do snakes get in?
Well, we had a station we get in pretty often, but outside of that, never too many.
Now, when they get in, could it shut the station down after?